This week, I shared a rich hour-long conversation titled Dancing with Darkness on my Substack, Hearthwoven. It features my friend Samuel Adams and continues a thread many of you may remember from his earlier appearance on episode 28 of this project. Recorded during a virtual event I hosted by the same name, the conversation is available for free. I invite you to check it out. Together we wove many threads, including the necessity and creative power of darkness, womb and winter wisdom, orienting toward the invisibles of life, dragon medicine, and more. The conversation also includes a lively interaction with participants toward the end. If it resonates, consider joining Hearthwoven as an early subscriber. There is much goodness to come. And if you haven't already, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Wild Heart Revival on your favorite podcast platform and to join us on YouTube for the visual side of the project. Your presence, ratings, shares, and thoughtful comments mean so much and truly nurture this humble project's ongoing organic growth. We live in a time of profound unraveling, where rusted institutions and dissociative ideals are crumbling, readying for compost, and the pathways forward are anything but clear. Yet within these thresholds of transformation lie soulful invitations and initiations to unlearn, to die, to deepen, to be resurrected and reoriented toward what truly matters. Cultivating the inner capacity to meet change with devotional presence and unwavering courage, what I sometimes call threshold literacy, isn't a luxury or a privilege. It's an absolute necessity. No matter where or who you are, and while the overculture moves ever faster toward a mechanical mess fueled by more, avoiding the mystery of transformation that beckons beyond the fences and in the cracks, the soul moves differently. My work is a humble offering into that slower, wilder current where the soul remembers how to move naturally. As a threshold counselor with an online practice, I work with wanderers, and edgewalkers, offering individual, couples, and group sessions, as well as end-of-life guidance. Thresholds are life's inevitable, pivotal moments where the fertile soil of transformation meets the wild edges of possibility. They signal change, disruption, and opportunity. They invite you into a new pattern of being, essential to your authentic becoming and belonging. As I've shared in recent weeks, I'm currently offering 25% off all my counseling services, and this is the final week to receive the discount. It applies to any counseling package, and you're welcome to begin whenever the timing feels right for you, now or later. If you'd like to learn more, you'll find details on my website linked in the show notes. I also offer free insight calls, risk-free opportunities to connect, explore what's stirring in you, and sense whether it feels right to walk together for a time. And I want you to know this. You are here with your unique style, your precious gifts, your wounds and wonders, your particular passions, interests, and creativity, not by accident, but as a blessing to this world. The web of life has entrusted you with your particular genius so that you might amplify what is good, what is true, what is beautiful. Do not shy away. Unfurl, dear one. The time has come. Welcome this threshold of becoming. Now, let's root into today's conversation. Welcome to Wild Heart Revival, a gathering place for heartfelt conversations and stories as pathways of renewal and revival. I'm your host, Tay Tayari, and today's guest is Robyn Watt. This is a tender and intimate conversation recorded in the wake of Robyn's recent journey with cancer, an experience that drew her into profound reverence for her earthen form and the animate force that hums through all of existence. She reflects on how close proximity to death sharpens the clarity and immediacy of life and love, inviting us to consider death not as an end, but as a beginning, an ancient cycle where darkness nourishes the light and where land, lineage, and story weave the spiraling tapestry of life. Drawing on Celtic wisdom, ancestral practices, and earthly flows and forces, Robyn offers a spacious invitation to presence and simplicity, calling us to recognize where our hearts draw sustenance and to pour ourselves fully into what truly matters, reminding us that though our time is uncertain, love and connection endure. Robyn is an animist practitioner and mentor with an academic and professional background in social work, psychology, British prehistory, and environmental studies. To date, she has spent thousands of hours in direct communion with nature and wilderness across Europe and North America. She founded Wild Song, which is a body of work that will offer experiential mentorship for fostering deep relationship with nature through ecosomatic principles and practices, ecological literacy, animist cosmology, and forest therapy. Robyn is also a mother to 3 daughters and, as I mentioned earlier, has recently overcome a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis and treatment. And before we get into the conversation in just a moment, I want to let you know that I tagged an important invitation onto the end of our conversation. And so I invite you to stick around for a few moments after this wonderful journey that Robyn and I went on together. So let's pick up our unique threads and tenderly weave them together into this spiraling tapestry of life as we slow down and sink into a soulful conversation with our beautiful and courageous guest for today, Robyn Watt. Carolyn Conger, she wrote a book called Through the Dark Forest. And there's a couple paragraphs here that I want to share from that book as a beginning anchor point. She says, expect to be surprised in your earthly incarnation. For the laws of stone and vegetation, of moving waters, thermal tides from the sun, and all dense matter comprising material worlds such as yours are capricious, not because of a careless or uncaring God, but for your soul's development. Without serendipity, there is no creativity. Without darkness, there is no light. Without death, there is no life. Both life and death are part of the same continuum. Your consciousness seeks contrast, and that necessitates chaos. Meeting this constant flux and flow of unpredictable energies with grace and passion is soul work. It is your work. Make your heart and mind as open as the cloudless sky and trust. Make this open transparency your center. Hold nothing back. Know that all ways to the end are equal. It's the quality of your journey through this incarnation that is weighed on the great scale of justice, measured, praised, and redeemed after death by you from the depth of your compassionate wisdom. And a line from Carl Jung, he says, only she remains vitally alive who is ready to die with life. So, it's a lot there. And I'm not going to take a question on. I'm just going to hand it over to you and allow you to enter whatever space was stirred from those words.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I had not heard either of those previously, and that really landed in a deep way for sure. Really, what is emerging in response to that is this deep feeling that from the first piece that you read, and certainly through my own experience of having come close to death recently in the last few months due to having cancer, it really resonates with me, this idea that being in close proximity to death in that way really enlivens the life force within us in ways that I don't think are very easy to come by when it's just life as normal. And in the first piece that you read, deep resonance there, that it was very much coming down to this earthly form that really got me through those periods of time recently, and coming into this very deep reverence and really profound love for being made of matter, for being made of a physical substance that is from this beautiful earth that we live on. Really coming to terms with that physical nature of being, you know, those elements of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen that make our bodies and create these incredible life forms, including ourselves, that we live amongst. And really falling to my knees in deep reverence of that during my recent experiences. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I saw that you wrote very recently on your Substack, that writing 100,000 Mothers, that you were exploring this this practice that emerged for you during this time of illness, of coming back to the body and contemplating all these different processes and aspects that come together to forge your earthly being. And you say that God is the 100,000 mothers before me, humming a mitochondrial song, vibrating through a precise chemical brew, the inheritance of 3.9 billion years, and one that I jubilantly regifted to my own daughters, as is the tradition of life, the force that loves so much and so well that it fights endlessly to realize itself.
Thank you. Thank you for reading my words like that. Thank you. Yeah, I was really coming into a space of holding a lot of prayers for life itself. And it's something else I write about in that piece, that since I was very young, I've always wanted something to be devoted to be in reverence of. I didn't grow up in a religious family at all. I grew up with very scientific atheist leanings, which I also really embrace in many ways and I'm grateful for. But I've always had that urge of what can I pray to? What do I fall down in reverence of? I've always had that longing, and I really found it when I was very sick, that it's the life force itself is for me what I can bring my prayers to, what I can bring my reverence to, because it's so incredible, it's so magical. I started to feel like we don't need anything else outside of that. This miraculous force that runs through all of us, that runs through all things, this desire to live and grow and replicate. I have 3 children, and that word jubilant, it really felt appropriate because it's such a joyful regifting, or it was in my experience, to pass this on, to have my daughters, to pass on the DNA, the mitochondria, the love of my lineage to them. And for me, that is an aspect of that life force. It's joyous. It's tumbling forward in joy and love in many ways, and that is where I started to feel I can really bring my prayers to now. And it was a really big opening for me in my life. I've always, for a very long time, had a deep love of nature and a deep spiritual connection to nature, but it went even deeper through that experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, more like cultures that are living closer to natural rhythms of Earth see death very differently. And I think it's very recent in human history that death is this process that we not only fear, but that we actually hide away from, that we turn away from, that we don't want to talk about, that we don't want to think about. But of course, you go into natural places, and this is one of the tragedies of humanity controlling, destroying, altering wild spaces
Mm.
um, in recent centuries, is that we don't have this ease of access to actual wild spaces that very clearly show you the power and potency of death. You know, you go into an old growth forest and there's death everywhere,
Mm.
but it's not this, it's like this fluidity that you feel. It's like, yes, there's death everywhere, but the log that's being taken into the earth is also this incredible complex for life. There's
Mm.
mosses and fungi and bugs and all these kinds of things thriving on
Mm.
the death and dying of this particular being. And that's a great gift. So
Yeah.
I mean, they literally call these trees that get snagged as they fall in their death nurse logs, that they're nursing life, they're nursing new forms, babies. um, and so I guess this is a roundabout way of me validating this deep insight of like how coming close to your death, becoming more intimate with your mortality, actually like forged a deepening into your love for motherhood and your
Mm.
appreciation for the mothering archetype that's essential for life to thrive, and
Mhm.
it's held up by the deep roots of death and dying.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. I have, as you were speaking, I'm in the Pacific Northwest right now, and
Oh.
so I'm surrounded by nurse logs and the great old growth forest. It's my favorite place on earth. I'm so happy to be here. So that imagery is very present with me.
Mm.
Yeah, so much really comes up for me in response to hearing you now. Um, yeah, in those moments of, contemplating the very real possibility of death, I was really feeling that whole weight of the ancestral inheritance behind me, all the souls and all the lives, all the DNA, all the experiences of this huge weight of this love that's come before me, and then what will come after me. Having three daughters, um, and just being this, my own consciousness, my own life, just being this one little piece
Mm.
in that link, in those many links,
Mhm.
and that love of knowing that this is so normal, and that we will all have to. Oh, we'll all have to converse with death. We will all have to come into a discourse with death. And what does it do? It enlivens us in ways that you can't even imagine without that discourse.
Mm.
Having a keen awareness of death, it brings life into very sharp focus. And like you say, we don't have a healthy relationship with death in our culture at all. And it's to our detriment. It's a poverty to not have that relationship. For many years, I studied and taught about my ancestral traditions, which are from the British Isles,
Mm.
Scottish and English primarily, and what we can learn from you know, especially in the Gallic culture, the ancient Celtic Gallic culture, is that those people had a very active relationship with death, like you say, because it was all around. It's part of nature. You're stepping through it all the time when you're in a deep relationship with nature, or when you're in the natural world, which we're not really in the industrial West. And you can see it in so many ways in the ancient cultural practices, many of which still survive today, fortunately, and in the language. You know, I like to think of it as a pilgrimage a couple of years ago to the northwest areas of Scotland and the Orkney Islands. And yeah, and many of the ancient sites there are what are understood to be burial chambers, where people had a very active relationship with the bones of the dead, where people would go in and out of these barrows, these, you know, chambered cairns, to actually sit with, it seems like, the bones of the dead, and be with them and listen to them, to still learn from them, and being surrounded by death in that way. It's so I mean, I can't imagine it, obviously, having never had that kind of experience, but knowing that my people did that, and that there's so many examples of it throughout the landscape. I mean, there's burial chambers everywhere in the British Isles, and it's what people were doing. It was a normal part of life, and for good reason, because there's so much wisdom in it, and because it feeds us. And there's even quite a strong, I'm sure you would know about it, there's quite a strong element of insular Celtic thought, to the best of my understanding, which is that the cycle of life actually begins with death. We see often that the new year is celebrated at Samhain, at Halloween, you know, because we're coming into the dark part of the year. And it's this deep understanding that you need to build that foundation and have a very deep engagement with the dark half of the year, which is death, which is the soil, in order to have any stability or sustainability or fruition of the light part of the year. The dark comes first, because it gives that real deep sustainability to the light, right? And so and again, coming into that experience personally of, and I know I keep going back to it, but it's still so present for me because it was so recent, but being so face to face with it recently, it's so beautiful, and it's gone so deep for me in that way of having that very embodied experience of it. And I just hope I don't forget it, you know. I hope I continue to walk with it, because it's such a teacher. And sorry, the last thing I just want to say on this tangent is just the gratitude that I got to live, even though I can hold death in a way that I can see how valuable it is, and how necessary it is, and how normal it is. I'm so glad I didn't die. I was really scared. And the fact that I didn't know if I would live is precisely what enabled that kind of experience and that engagement with it to occur. And I'm so grateful that I got to live however much longer I have, with that new understanding. Because I love life. I love life.
Probably way more so even. And please don't be sorry for expressing gratitude. You just jubilantly express it. It's and well, I was reminded there's so much in what you just shared there, like this sense of that life actually grows out of the dark, that life grows out of the death. There's a Hopi proverb. They say, "In death I am born." And so it's an old understanding that, well, and of course, so many creation myths across the world, including the Christian Bible, dark first, and then God says, "Let there be light." It's not light and then, hey, we should add some darkness in here. It's like, no, the foundation is the dark, rich humus, the fertile womb of the void. And then life comes from that. So
Yeah.
this turning away from death and the darkness is a turning away from life. It's a turning away from the fundamental foundation that allows creation, that gives us the gift of this life. And I just, what did I want to mention here? Oh yeah, you mentioned bones too. And it's interesting, right? Because it is a gift of life. Um, we are stewards of our body for the moment.
Mm.
The fact that bones remain, they stay, unless you burn them up or whatever, they stay for some amount of time, and they can stay a long time if they're in the right conditions. And it's like your life isn't there anymore. I mean, there's probably some memories etched in those bones, but for the most part, you've moved on. Your energetic signature's moved on, but your bones are there. And I'm reminded of a quote from Pablo Neruda. He says, "In the end, everyone should become aware of this. Nobody keeps any of what he has, and life is only a borrowing of bones." So
Mm.
there's this essential humility that when we turn toward death and begin to cultivate a real allyship, there's this necessary humility of bowing down and saying, I know I'm just here borrowing for the moment. I know I'm just a steward for the moment. There's this hubris that is just kind of laden in our culture, that we are the owners of our bodies,
Mm.
do whatever we want. And then we see how that extends into the other bodies of landscapes and other beings, and even like other humans, that we get to control the outcome of things.
Mhm.
And so I'm just so curious to hear you speak about that.
Mm.
You mentioned fear that obviously very naturally arises when you meet your mortality like this. But
Yeah.
what did that sense of control, that kind of colonized, outcome-oriented part of you, that's also a part of me and probably everyone listening, how did that get confronted, and how did it change?
Yeah. No, I think you definitely have pinpointed a part of it for sure. Yeah, so a few things to speak about there. Certainly, loss of control was huge. And I feel like that was a big part of the initiatory aspect of it, was this absolute like not knowing of what was going to come next. And I truly feel like that is what the process of initiation is you're not guaranteed an outcome. You have no idea
Mhm,
what's going to happen. And that's the realness of it. And that's what makes an initiatory experience powerful,
mhm,
is that the outcome is absolutely not guaranteed in any way. You don't know. It could have been anything. I could have died. I could have continued on for a long time still with the disease. I could have been cured. I'm incredibly grateful that I was cured.
mhm,
Um, but you don't know. And it is this loss of control. And you are at the feet of something much, much, much vaster and bigger and more intelligent than yourself. And that's brought into very clear, very clear focus when you're in that state, being
mhm,
like, wow, everything I thought I could control, it's a complete illusion. It just has happened that I've been able to go about my life without bumping into that so far. But no, here's the reality. Here it is now.
mhm,
Um, and certainly that feeling of having borrowed the body, it was an oath that I really made to myself when I was at my sickest, to tend to my body as much as I could. It was a promise that I made to myself and to life, my children. If I get through this, I am going to tend to my body. That's my first priority. That's my job. Even if it
mhm,
takes up 80-90% of my time from now on, that's what it is.
mhm,
Because having physical form is so sacred, it's so precious, it's such a gift. I am not going to just let this fall by the wayside any longer. I was a pretty healthy person before. I was interested in nutrition and diet, exercise, all of that. But I was so wrapped up in the culture. I was so busy. I was working all the time. I was a single parent.
mhm,
I didn't have any time to really take care of myself. I wasn't eating anywhere near enough. I was at a desk all day. And yeah, it was like, whoa, I need to tend. Okay, no, now this has to stop, and I have to tend to my body. And like you say, that very physical matter, the bones. What am I going to do to get strong now?
Mm,
How am I, and put my body in the forefront as this incredible vehicle, this vessel for being able to be present on this earth with all these amazing relationships I have, the communities I'm part of, nature. That's it. That's it. It's very simple.
mm,
And it was a huge turning point for me, that now I focus on tending this vessel of life. That's my
mm,
job. That's my job for as long as I get the privilege to do so.
mm, mm, mm.
Mm-hmm.
Which of course, when you're really tending to your body in a wholesome way, there's just a natural outpouring. It's like reciprocity just becomes this like natural tendency from a well cared for, well nourished body and being. Um, because I think that's our natural state, is to be in reciprocal, reverent relationship. And when we cultivate that within, then it just pours out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I it sounds like it's been incredibly life clarifying for you. Now, I'm wondering about, and always just sharing what you feel comfortable sharing on a
Mm-hmm.
public platform. But I'm curious about you speaking to if there was any process around like tending to aspects of your life that felt like they needed to be tended to, in order to, if you were to die a good death, so to
Mm-hmm.
say. You know, like unfinished business, like fuck, if I went out and that wasn't cared for differently, like that's gonna be difficult to carry out of this life with. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Is there a
definitely.
process like that?
Yeah. And the only thing it was my children, was how do I
Mm,
leave? How do I say goodbye to my children?
mm, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah. And how to do that, like how much time do I have to do that?
mhm,
How well am I going to be able to hold that with them? Because there was a
mm,
lot of time where I couldn't even really spend time with them because I was so tired and so exhausted, and my immune system was so low, I had to isolate.
right.
So what is the quality and quantity of time I have with them?
Mm,
And what is it that I wish to close out with them? And how, what can I give to them, and what can come alive in my relationship with them
mm,
now, if this is the last few months, moments I have with them? And each of my daughters are very different. They're really wonderful beings, and they're
mm,
very different personalities. And I spent a lot of time really considering how I would meet each one of them, because it would be a very different process with each one of them, because they're
right.
so different. Um, so it was really, really kind of contemplating, as a mother, what would I give to my children in these moments that would hopefully sustain them throughout the rest of their lives and with their children? What is it that I have to offer to
Mm,
close out? And it's a very, I mean, in many ways, it was a beautiful thing to do, right? Because we never know how much time we have left with anyone.
yeah,
And it's an important thing to do.
yeah.
And the weight of it is massive, so massive.
Mm,
And so throughout that time, when I was contemplating those things, it was this mixture of really going as deep as I could with it, because this could have been the last thing I had to offer them. And then also this deep prayer of like, please let this not be the end with them. Please, because they're young. My children are
mm,
young.
mm,
Yeah. And that's all that mattered, actually, was how to close out with them.
mhm,
Yeah. Like
yeah,
fundamentally, I mean, there's a lot of things I could I could tend to, right? Like my belongings, or I don't know, but it was the forefront was my daughters. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then also feeling, it's such a mixture, right? Because in many ways I had gratitude for having time to even contemplate that. A lot of people don't get that kind of time to think about that when
right.
they lose a loved one. And so how lucky am I to even have that? But so a mixture of many things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. This ability for death to redirect us to our heart and
Mm.
our heart's longings, and the most, like, the relationships that nourish our hearts the most, basically to redirect us back to love in a deeper way. Because of course, I'm sure you loved your daughter so much before the diagnosis, and then going into that threshold space of the unknown in a very real way, it's just like a descent into deeper layers of love. Do you see that that's kind of like one of the only things that actually really matters, is like how well you're loving?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And alongside that, as I mentioned before, is really feeling the, and it feel, I say weight, I don't know if that's a great word or not, but the vast presence of everyone who'd come before me. I've had a, you know, an ancestral reverence practice for many years, and it's very active practice. And feeling the
Yeah.
grandmothers before me, because I'm very connected to my maternal lineage,
Mm,
especially as a mother, especially having daughters, and being very close to my mother and my grandmother when she was alive, um, and, and really calling on them to guide me through that process. Like,
mm,
please show me please guide me here, because this uncharted territory. How do you say goodbye to your young children,
mhm,
right? How it's a tragedy, it's a complete tragedy. And really was calling on my maternal lineage to hold me and guide me
mhm,
in, and show up for it. You
mhm,
know, I didn't have a lot of energy at that time, but how do I garner that energy that I need to do this very, very important thing?
mm.
And having that intelligence alongside me was just invaluable in that process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It kept connecting into deep time and ancestry, which is something, like, it's beautiful to hear that that's been a practice for some time. For many folks, that isn't in their awareness. It's one of the tragedies of modernity and the colonized world, that our connection to ancestry tends to be very minimal. But it's amazing how connecting in with your mortality in this way can just invite you into like a real rooted relationship with, um, this this your lineage.
Yeah,
um, and that there's so the thing is that's not only a spiritual connection, but it's also a very practical one. Like you're saying, I had to connect with my ancestry to just ask the practical question of how do I do this?
yeah.
And this is something that I think is really important for people to realize, is your ancestors live within you. They're here. They
Mm.
didn't go anywhere. They're here now. And by connecting with them in a real way, in a sincere way, there's actually practicalities that they're here to show us. Um, I'm just realizing through our conversation that death and dying and an allyship with death can actually connect us into that, but also not just our own human lineage, because we started this conversation talking about all these other, aspects of the earthly matrix that you were contemplating and feel more connected to. Have you noticed that this experience has allowed you to feel more deeply connected to just life and life force in general? And have you noticed a heightened quality of your relationship with the living world? And I'm just reminded of this amazing quote by Wallace Stevens. He says, "Death is the mother of beauty, mystical." And so I'm wondering too,
Mhm.
alongside, if you've this deepening into life and connection with life, is there also a deepening into a sense of beauty and the mystical and even the imaginal?
Mm, yes, absolutely. I would say that's almost the totality of it in many ways, is that perspective. And that, yeah, like I like the word enlivening actually for
Mm,
that. It feels that way. And yeah, definitely, yeah, sorry. So much you've said that is just sparking so many
I understand. Yeah.
responses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So certainly when you said, yeah, our ancestors are still with us, they still live within us. Yes, in a very real way. I feel like this is very literal. It's in our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in our awareness and our consciousness, and within the unseen realms, again, which is a very key aspect of my ancestral traditions, is being able to, traverse and communicate with the unseen worlds. Very long history of that in the Isles, the British Isles.
Yeah.
And so, but deepening into both of those aspects, because my ancestors were not only adept in in maintaining relationships with the deceased in the unseen worlds, but also in this very physical way, as they did with the bones. I mean, it's even been shown recently, or in the last decade or so, that Stonehenge was built with the stones of a circle that had previously been erected in Wales and brought over to Salisbury Plain, which is many very long journey to take those stones for people that didn't have vehicles as we know them today.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but they had brought with them the cremated remains of presumably their ancestors and placed them in the new post holes in on Salisbury Plain,
Wow.
current location of Stonehenge. And we can tell this because an incredible thing about bones is that we can see where somebody comes from with bones through isotope analysis. You can see
Mm.
the chemical makeup of bones, and you can see where somebody grew up through what they ate, like literally through what they ate, what their environment was. Our environment is in our bones. It's
Yeah.
a matrix kind of crystallized in our bones, or ossified in our bones, that in a very real way connects us to the landscape. I think in a way that my ancestors and certainly probably all of our ancestors understood in a very deep way, that we are part of the land. Actually, we just move around. We're just an animated part of the land that can move
Mhm.
around.
Mm.
And um and I I feel this very keenly, that we have this very physical connection to our ancestors, and then this very imaginal connection, and they're present with us through all of that. um I I always think about how my own bones would be quite different from my children, because we grew up in very different areas. And what
Mm.
does that say about us? Like, if people were to look in 1,000 years at our bones and see that
Right.
we came from very different places, and yet, and yet we're very close.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that was part of this reverence that I fell into as well, of this, of how we're so connected to physical form, how physical form is so integral to our experience of being alive on the earth. And
Mm.
then when we no longer have physical form, how do we maintain those relationships? For me, it's been an ancestral reverence practice. I communicate regularly with my ancestors. I have done for quite a few years. And it's something I try to pass on to my children too. I try to include them as much in those practices, so
Mm.
that when the time comes that I'm not here, we still have an open line of communication. It's And I think that's our inheritance. That's what humans have actually been doing for the most part for many, hundreds of thousands of years. It's only more recently in our newer culture of the industrial West that we've really lost that understanding of how to do that. And
Yeah.
it was comforting to know that, no, this isn't the end of my relationship with my children. it
Mm.
it's a transformation of form,
Yeah.
but the line of communication can still be open,
Mm.
as has been, as the path has been laid down for us for many hundreds of thousands of years previously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I've read that it's typical for indigenous folks to, like, this idea of ancestry isn't just about humans, right? It's not just about your human ancestry. And in fact, like when your grandmother dies or your mother dies in many indigenous cultures, their their connection to their mother or grandmother or their ancestors isn't necessarily a connection to some disembodied human, spiritual form. That there's this sense that, mother is now in the land, grandmother is now in the land. Like, mother could be the sparrow, could be the oak sapling, like, and so ancestry actually is within the many varied forms that the landscape takes up in any given moment. And I think that that's so important, right? Because we tend to have this like hyper anthropocentric lens on everything that we do, and including this sense of our lineage. And the fact is, like you're saying, we are made up of the land. When we eat and we create our body matrix, it's coming from, of course, these other life forms, and those other life forms are fed by others. And so we're this multifaceted or complex, mirrored entanglement or milieu of life. I think that's important to remember, and I could hear you speaking to that in your own way. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm just kind of jamming on that idea.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel like it's this it is this very keen awareness of being an interwoven part of the fabric of nature. Whereas it's so easy to not feel like that in our everyday lives, walking around, doing our jobs, all of that, going to the grocery store instead of going to the forest or the shoreline or whatever it is. It's very easy to not remember that. But we are part of the fabric of the land in a very literal way, very literal, like the stuff of our bodies. And I think, what does that mean for death? What I think that's really a lot of what our conversation is centered on, and also what your body of work that you're welcoming in, it's, to me, sounds like it is a focus of as well. What is death in given that? Given that we're part of everything, and that we go on into all these other forms, what is death? And death is life. So there it is. It gives life. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Which, and life is literally everything that we experience, right? Like everything you look around you, and I mean, I'm of the view that everything's alive to some degree, that animacy and soul is imbued through all form. But if you can't go that far, like, just look outside and notice how much life there is, even in a city neighborhood. And of course, your house, if it's built of wood, like, that wood came from life. So death is life, but life is everything. So then death is also everything. So why would we? So when we turn away from it, we're turning away from God. We're turning away from everything. We're turning away from like the fundamental through line that allows our experience to even occur. Khalil Gibran, he's amazing, incredible poet. He says, "For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and melt into the sun?" Rabindranath Tagore says, "Death is not extinguishing the light. It is only putting out the lamp because the dawn has come." So the dawn has come for you in this very real way. And I'm just curious for the end here to just explore, like, what is different? You mentioned how before you were working so much, doing all these things. What has clarified, now having this sense that the lamp is put out because the dawn has come at death, but the dawn comes every day, right? I mean, that's what meeting your mortality in this way really shows, is like, every day you wake up, it's a gift. The sun rises, and this is a new opportunity for life. You die when you go to sleep, and this is a new day. So how are you approaching your new day, this new clarified gift that you've been given?
Thank you for the question. The word that really comes to me is simplicity. I was very I was overcomplicating everything in my life previous to having cancer
Mm.
in every way you can imagine. And and I thought that was good or intelligent or normal or
Or
all of those
expected
things.
of you.
Yes, yeah, very much. And now it's very simple. I'm lucky because I'm not having to work right away because I'm on EI, or I'm on leave through having had cancer, for medical leave.
Good.
And so I've been able to really simplify things. And that's what feels by far the most nourishing thing I could ever do. And
Mm.
it very much is, I'm eating. Whereas before I didn't eat enough. I was too busy to really
Mm.
eat.
Right.
So I'm eating, I'm going to bed early, and I'm really working on getting deep sleep. That's
Mm.
something I'm really loving. I'm doing a lot of walks and hikes in nature, in natural spaces. And I'm really rebuilding relationships with a lot of my friends and family that I didn't have time for before. So it's very simple, but it's so nourishing. And I feel like I couldn't have crafted my life that way without going through this very embodied experience of illness and survival. Because before I was always reaching for the next thing, like, what can I do to be more successful? How can I advance my career? I was in social work. Um, and I was working in addictions and domestic violence, and I really wanted to go forward in that career, and I still love it, but I will never do it again, I don't think.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so it's come right back to these simple things that I never would have cared for before, or would have seen as boring or annoying or just things to push to the side, and now they're the center.
Wow.
And it's really lovely. It's really lovely. And what is emerging actually is this really deep sense of creativity that had not had the room to emerge in any significant way for a long time because I was so busy. And now it's bubbling up, and it's lovely to feel it and see it and engage with it. So that's really where I'm at. Yeah.
Mm.
And it
Yeah.
feels great, actually. It feels great. Yeah. And I'm hoping, I'm still monitoring my health. I still have to check in with my oncologist for the next little while. But it's so far so good. And
Yeah.
I think the real lesson is to deepen into those ways for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. I've called myself a student of simplicity for years because mostly because I just need to keep reminding myself that that is the most important thing, is to always reorient toward the most simple path. And that doesn't mean it's not alive and complex with beauty and creativity and connection, but that the complications that come with the machinations of the civilized world, the civilized machine, the myth of progress. Like, this is what I was hearing when you're describing the busyness and trying to, go further in your career and kind of sacrificing all these other fundamental aspects of your humanity so that you could progress within the system. And then you meet your death, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What is this myth I've been living by? The myth of progress? What? Look at what it was doing to me. It just broke me down and
Yeah.
eventually led to this kind of miracle of sorts, which is amazing. And now, but there's this realization, I need to live a new story. I need to live a new story. So how would
Yeah.
you describe that? I mean, you kind of just described it, but just to kind of, you know, give it this beautiful header, like what's the story you're living now?
Oh my goodness. What a wonderful question. What is the story? It's presence. It's presence with life. Yeah, it's being present with my body and with my life.
Mm.
And before, again, I was so busy that I didn't have time to do anything at a very deep level, really, because I was too scattered and I was too, jumping ahead to whatever the next thing was. I had so many interests, so many things I wanted to do, but I was never fully present with any of them because it was always, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And now I'm coming in with this simplicity and having that time and space to actually be present. It's the most beautiful thing. It's the most beautiful practice. I'm I'm actually doing forest therapy training because I don't want to be a therapist anymore. I was a therapist previously in my social
Right.
work role, which is very necessary and needed, but it's not for me any longer. And I'm learning to be able to guide others to let the forest be the therapist. And I'm really enjoying that. It's a very slow and easeful training that is just right for me right now. I just have the bandwidth for it.
Really.
And it's presence. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Like,
You.
it's just said, it's so, yeah, I said miraculous that you're still here, that you get to now, there's these incredible gifts you've been given that you get to now live into and just enjoy and appreciate, but then to share, um, and without the need, the sense of urgency, just like, because what I'm hearing is like now you get to slow down. You get to slow down and just give yourself and the world, your kin, love and the gifts you forge naturally. And that's amazing. And so thank God, thank goodness, thank cosmos, thank your body, thank this earth that you're still here with us. And I wonder if to close, you have just like a message from your heart or from the heart of impermanence that you've come into closer contact with. What kind of message would you share with those tuning in?
Mm. Yeah, thanks for that opportunity. I think it comes from really what would I have told myself before this
Mhm.
experience, you know. Um, and again, it's simple, but it is to really focus in on what are those parts of your life where your heart lives, and how can you pour into that?
Mhm.
Because we really don't know what time we have here. We don't. So how can you pour into those things where your heart is living
Mm,
now?
mm,
And that's what I would say to myself, because that's what I wasn't doing. And I believe it's what led for me getting sick, really, was being so separated from that. Yeah, I think that is what it is. Yeah, thank you.
beautiful. Thank you, Robyn.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. It's been lovely.
It's been truly lovely. Yeah, I'm very grateful. As we close this beautifully carnal conversation, I want to share an invitation that is tenderly and reverently growing in my heart. Beginning this October 2025, I'll be gathering a small circle, 5 or 6 folks who feel called to live the next year as if it were their last. This isn't about rushing or despair, but about a slow, soulful journey into the heart of impermanence, a gentle yet fierce clarifying of what truly matters when we walk with a ripening awareness of mortality and cultivate a deep devotion to enlivened presence, attention, and meaningful living. Together in this intimate container, we will cultivate real and raw intimacy with death, not as a force to fear, but as a fierce and loving guide and companion. We will learn to welcome the full spectrum of our experience, the trembling of fear, the mystery of grief, and the expansive breath of praise. From the darkness comes light, from death, life. Thomas Merton said this so beautifully, and really this simple truth is the pulse of the journey we'll take together. By turning toward death, not as an end, but as a mirror, we begin to see what is most alive in us. In walking with death by our side, we are invited into a more vivid, honest, and wholehearted way of being. We'll tend to the essential threads in our lives, creatively weaving them with both personal and collective insight and care. It is an invitation to root yourself in radical authenticity and heartfelt purpose, to lean into the wild, transformative edges where death and life merge, and to walk together toward a ritual threshold of death and rebirth. The journey includes 2 group gatherings each month and monthly one-on-one sessions with me. If this calling stirs something, anything in you, reach out for a free insight call. Let's curiously explore whether this path is for you. I will be sharing more about A Year to Live as October draws near, but if you feel the gravity of this journey now, know that you are welcome anytime. And with that, I'll be signing off. Bless your heart and your way.